Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Griffin with the Unit 3 Lesson 4 video. We're going to be constructing perpendicular lines and then altitudes and orthocenters, which are based on perpendicular lines. So first off, let's remember that perpendicular lines, that's the symbol here, form right angles. So when we think about what an altitude is, it's a segment that goes from the vertex of a triangle or other shape, and it goes perpendicular to the opposite side. All right, and then like yesterday when we talked about the incenter being where the angle bisectors meet, the point of concurrency of the altitudes is called the orthocenter. So where the altitudes meet is the orthocenter. So let's talk about how to do a perpendicular. For starters, we have two possibilities. One where we're drawing a perpendicular through a point that's on the line, and one when we're drawing a perpendicular through a point that's not on the line. So if we're doing this on the line, first thing we're going to do is realize that the point is very important, and we're going to treat this a lot like we did when we bisected an angle. We need to abbreviate what we're discussing from the line. So we're going to have an arc that will cross the line twice, just like it did with an angle bisector. And then just like an angle bisector, we're going to put the point of our compass on one of those intersection points that the arc made. The difference here is now we have to open up more than halfway. You can go all the way to the other intersection point if you would like, but as long as you are more than halfway across, you're past point A, you have enough distance in your compass. And then we're going to go either above or below the line and swing an arc from each of the two intersection points that we created with our first arc. So the first arc can be any size you would like, but the second two must have the same radius. And then they will create an intersection point, which we can then take point A and connect that intersection point through point A. And what we've done by doing that is created two perpendicular lines. Now, if point A is not on the line to start with, nothing changes about how we approach the construction. It's just where the point is to begin with. So we begin just like we did before by putting the point of our compass on the point A and opening our compass so that we can create an arc that crosses the line twice. Keep in mind, if the line isn't long enough to make that the two intersections, you can extend the line because lines are infinite. And then just like before, we want to put the point of the compass down onto one of the intersections. And naturally, when the point is off the line, it's already more than halfway between them. And then once you have one arc from that intersection, you go to the other, and you create another arc. And then just like before, you will connect that intersection up through point A, having created perpendicular lines. Okay. Now, if we want to do an altitude is, like we said earlier, it's going to be a perpendicular line, and it's going to go from a vertex and perpendicular to a particular side. So when we tell you what vertex to start from, that is where you begin that very first arc. So you're going to put the point of your compass on vertex P, and we're going to be going just like we did on the last example from point P perpendicular to QR. So we're going to swing an arc that crosses QR in two spots, and then we are going to go from each of those intersections and swing another arc on the other side of the line from P so that we get an intersection. And then when we connect that intersection up through point P, we create an altitude. And inside the triangle is typically where we would look at the altitude, because that is where it goes from the vertex perpendicular to the opposite side. Now, in an obtuse triangle, things are a little different. When I try to follow the same steps as earlier and put the point of my compass up on P and open it so that I cross through line QR twice, I have an issue. I'm not getting a second intersection because QR does not go long enough. So the way to fix that problem is to take your ruler and extend QR. That way you now have two intersections that you can use here and here for your compass. And so then from those two intersections, you can draw your two arcs and then connect back to point P to get the altitude that you are looking for. All right, and this altitude is now outside of the triangle. Okay. Now, if we try to connect it in a right triangle from P perpendicular to QR, the interesting thing is that if we go from P perpendicular to QR, the line that is perpendicular to QR is already there. It is PQ. So PQ is the altitude in that right triangle. Okay. Now, altitudes can also be drawn in shapes other than triangles, like, for example, this trapezoid. So all the same steps, going from the vertex that they tell us, from P and then to QR, and the same thing as before, we want it to cross QR twice, and then we're going to move our compass so that it's on each intersection and create 2 more arcs. And then when I connect those arcs, that intersection back up to P, you have an altitude inside of your trapezoid as well. And that can be done from either vertex P or S. All right, now an orthocenter is the point of concurrency of the altitude. So it's where the altitudes intersect. So what we're going to do is we're going to create more than one altitude. So we're going to begin by doing the one that you're used to, starting at the top and creating an altitude from Q to PS. And so we'll open the compass so that we can make 2 intersections. And if you do need to extend PR to make that happen, like I do, that is acceptable. And then you can, from those 2 intersections, make your 2 other arcs. And remember, that first arc has to be 1 arc length, and then the second 2 have to be the same radius, but they can be a little different than the first one, as long as it's more than halfway between the 2 intersection points. Okay, and then you can create the altitude that goes through that. So that's one altitude that we needed to create from Q downward. We're also going to create an altitude from another point. Let's start at P. And just like earlier, we're going to start with our compass point on P, and we're going to open it, and we're going to create an arc that crosses the opposite side in 2 spots. And if you do need to extend that side again, you can. So here we can extend side QR so that we actually get 2 intersections with that red arc. And then from those 2 intersection points, just like earlier, you're going to swing 2 other arcs. And again, as long as they stay the same size and it's more than halfway across, they will intersect. And then you can connect that back to point P. And there is another one of your altitudes. All right, and then the third altitude from from R to PQ, you're going to follow the same steps. So you're going to open your compass so that it'll cross the line in 2 spots. And then you'll make 2 more arcs from those intersections. And then connect where they cross through the opposite vertex. And there is your final altitude. And you can see that the 3 altitudes meet right here at this spot, and that spot is the orthocenter. Okay, if you're trying to do this with an obtuse triangle, things get a little bit different. Now, going back for a moment, if I never created that third altitude, this point of intersection from the first 2 is still the orthocenter. So the nice thing is you really only need 2 of your altitudes. You don't need all 3. Now for the obtuse triangle, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to construct our 2 altitudes. So you're going to put your your compass on one vertex, and you're going to open it up and create an arc that crosses the opposite side twice. If you need to extend the opposite side to actually get that intersection, feel free. I'm going to have to redo that arc. Okay, once you get those 2, just like earlier, you're going to put your compass on each intersection. and swing 2 more arcs so that you can get a point of intersection out here, and then that line will be one of your altitudes. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing from another vertex. So go to a different vertex of the triangle, whichever one you prefer. I'm going to use this one. And we're going to open our compass and swing an arc so that it crosses the opposite side twice. And then for those 2 intersections, I'm going to swing 2 more arcs just like before. And where they intersect, I will connect back to the vertex I started from. Now, what's interesting is on this one, you can see that the lines are not crossing one another, but if I were to make them longer, eventually they will intersect. Further down, and that point here is your orthocenter. And if you were to do the 3rd altitude, what would happen is you would extend this side and you would get an altitude that would also connect out that way with your construction marks. I'm just showing you where it would be. And that is your orthocenter, but you only do need the 2. Alright, and for a right triangle, like we said before, is where your 2 altitudes are intersecting. Remember, P to Q, that's one of your altitudes because it's making a perpendicular. R to Q is also a perpendicular. So what's nice on a right triangle is that the vertex where the right angle is always your orthocenter. So you actually don't need to do any work on that one. Alright, I'll see you in class.